Historical what-ifs. Exploring alternate realities. History is filled with pivotal moments where a different decision or a small change in circumstances could have altered the course of events entirely. These what-ifs invite us to imagine alternate realities and consider how different our world might be today. While we can never truly know what would have happened, exploring these historical what-ifs allows us to better understand the fragility of history and the impact of individual choices. Here are some of the most intriguing historical what-if scenarios. What if Alexander the Great had lived longer? Alexander the Great, one of history's greatest military leaders, died at the young age of 32 in 323 BCE. His untimely death left his vast empire, which stretched from Greece to India, in turmoil. Without a clear successor, his generals fought for control, leading to the fragmentation of the empire into several Hellenistic kingdoms. But what if Alexander had lived longer and continued his conquests? Would he have succeeded in unifying his empire and spreading Hellenistic culture even further? Could he have extended his reach into the Arabian Peninsula, North Africa, or even Europe? If Alexander had lived, the cultural and political landscape of the ancient world might have been drastically different, potentially delaying the rise of Rome and altering the course of Western civilization. What if the Spanish Armada had succeeded in 1588? In 1588, the Spanish Armada, a massive fleet sent by King Philip II of Spain, attempted to invade England and overthrow Queen Elizabeth I. The Armada's success would have had profound consequences for European history. England, a Protestant nation, might have been brought under Catholic rule, and the Spanish Empire could have solidified its dominance over Europe. The defeat of the Armada, however, marked the beginning of Spain's decline and the rise of England as a global naval power. If the Armada had succeeded, the English Reformation might have been reversed, and the colonization of North America could have taken a different path, with Spain rather than England leading the charge. The cultural, religious, and political development of Europe and the Americas would have been transformed. What if Napoleon had won the Battle of Waterloo? The Battle of Waterloo in 1815 marked the end of Napoleon Bonaparte's reign and the final defeat of his ambitions to dominate Europe. But what if Napoleon had won this decisive battle? A victory at Waterloo could have allowed Napoleon to re-establish his empire and continue his campaigns across Europe. The political map of Europe would have looked very different, with Napoleon possibly maintaining control over much of the continent. His ideas of legal reform, centralization, and nationalism might have spread even further, potentially accelerating the unification of countries like Italy and Germany. However, a prolonged Napoleonic era could have also meant continued warfare and instability in Europe, delaying the Industrial Revolution and the rise of new powers like Britain and Prussia. What if the South had won the American Civil War? The outcome of the American Civil War, which ended in 1865 with the defeat of the Confederate States, shaped the future of the United States and its role in the world. But what if the South had won the war? A Confederate victory would have resulted in the establishment of a separate nation based on the institution of slavery, fundamentally altering the trajectory of American history. The United States might have been permanently divided, with the Confederacy existing as a separate, slave-holding nation. This division could have weakened both nations, making them vulnerable to foreign influence and altering the balance of power in the Western Hemisphere. The abolition of slavery would have been delayed, and the civil rights movement might have taken a different, more challenging path. Additionally, the global influence of the United States in the 20th century would have been significantly diminished. What if Archduke Franz Ferdinand had not been assassinated? The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary in 1914 is often cited as the spark that ignited World War I. But what if the assassination had never occurred? Without this catalyst, it is possible that the complex web of alliances and tensions in Europe might not have erupted into a full-scale war. The 20th century could have unfolded very differently, with the empires of Austria-Hungary, Germany, and Russia remaining intact for longer periods. The absence of World War I might have prevented the rise of totalitarian regimes like Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia, and the subsequent horrors of World War II and the Holocaust might never have occurred. The global balance of power, technological advancements, and social changes that resulted from the wars could have taken a completely different course. What if the Cuban Missile Crisis had escalated? The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 brought the world to the brink of nuclear war as the United States and the Soviet Union faced off over the placement of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba. For 13 tense days, the world held its breath as both superpowers teetered on the edge of catastrophe. But what if the crisis had escalated into full-scale nuclear conflict? A nuclear war between the US and the USSR would have had devastating consequences, potentially wiping out major cities and causing unprecedented loss of life. The global environment would have been severely impacted by nuclear fallout, leading to widespread famine and long-term ecological damage. The Cold War might have ended abruptly, with a shattered world struggling to recover from the devastation. The geopolitical landscape would have been permanently altered, with the possibility of new powers rising from the ashes or a prolonged period of global instability. What if the Black Death had never occurred? The Black Death, a devastating pandemic that swept through Europe, Asia, and North Africa in the 14th century, killed an estimated 200 million people, drastically reducing the population of Europe. The pandemic had profound social, economic, and cultural effects, including labor shortages, the decline of feudalism, and the rise of the middle class. But what if the Black Death had never occurred? Without the population decline caused by the plague, Europe might not have experienced the same social upheaval, and the transition to a more modern economy could have been delayed. The Renaissance, which was partly fueled by the changes brought about by the Black Death, might not have flourished as it did. Additionally, the balance of power between Europe and other regions, such as the Islamic world and China, might have remained more equal, potentially altering the course of global history. What if China had continued its maritime expeditions? In the early 15th century, during the Ming Dynasty, China embarked on a series of ambitious maritime expeditions led by Admiral Zheng He. These expeditions, which reached as far as East Africa, demonstrated China's naval prowess and potential for global influence. However, after Zheng He's voyages, the Ming government abruptly ended these expeditions and adopted a policy of isolationism, focusing inward rather than outward. But what if China had continued its maritime explorations and expanded its influence across the oceans? A more outward-looking China might have established colonies or trade networks in regions that would later be dominated by European powers. The history of global exploration, trade, and colonization could have been fundamentally different, with China potentially playing a leading role in shaping the modern world. This might have also affected the rise of European colonial empires and the spread of Western culture and technology. What if the Industrial Revolution had started in Asia? The Industrial Revolution, which began in Britain in the late 18th century, transformed the world by introducing new technologies, industries, and ways of living. But what if the Industrial Revolution had started in Asia instead of Europe? Regions like China and India were historically wealthy and technologically advanced, and under different circumstances, they could have led the industrialization process. An Asian-led industrial revolution might have shifted the balance of global power, with Asian nations becoming the dominant economic and technological forces. This could have altered the course of colonization, global trade, and cultural exchange, with Asian values, technologies, and political systems playing a more central role in shaping the modern world. The social and economic structures of Europe and the Americas would have been vastly different, potentially leading to a different global order. Conclusion: historical what-ifs offer a fascinating glimpse into the countless possibilities that history could have taken. While we can never truly know how these alternate realities might have unfolded, exploring these scenarios helps us appreciate the complexity of history and the significance of the choices made by individuals and societies. By considering these what-ifs, we gain a deeper understanding of the forces that have shaped our world and the fragile nature of the events that define our past.